Hi, everyone. If you're here, this is a quick impromptu chat. I'm working from home, quote unquote, today. So I thought, why not have a late lunch hour discussing the recent revelations from, well, firstly, Farage, and secondly, now from Boris Johnson regarding Brexit with dear old Captain Swiss. So how are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Although, having woke up this morning to the news that Boris Johnson said what he has, I might have to reconsider that position quite soon.
You poor old Brexiters. Well, this is why I wanted to go over it with you. To fill you guys in, I know a few of you will give you some time to join, etc. But for those of you who don't know, Boris Johnson has essentially come out and been quoted as saying that if indeed, and as it looks like at the moment, the government is pursuing a soft Brexit, i.e. Brexit in name only, whatever you want to call it, that he would actually prefer to remain within the EU. Now, this has obviously put a bit of a spanner in the works when it comes to the Brexiters who hold Boris Johnson at the sort of helm, as it were. Oh, that's a bit of a nasty thought. But so could you tell me what your thoughts are then, Swiss? I mean, I know what it is from my side, and I'll be honest, I'm not relishing it as a Remainer. It just looks like even more of a clusterfuck.
Well, where to start with this, I suppose. First of all, the fact that Boris's comments have come only a handful of days after Nigel Farage's revelations on his position, that I feel that could be significant, first of all.
Right.
I'd said to you before we started streaming anyway, obviously what Boris has said is, I think, if we're going to be getting this wishy-washy soft Brexit, then we might as well stay in the European Union because it would be no good for us to be, I think he used the phrase, tethered along like Norway or something along those lines. And from my perspective, should it be seen as a sort of an outburst to go, Boris is so ardently pro-Brexit, he's like, oh, if we're going to be stuck with this shitty soft Brexit, we might as well stay in the whole bloody thing? Or is he starting to try and get us prepared? Is he starting to lay the groundwork for a Bojo U-turn or something, where at some point down the line he's going to go, oh, well, I don't think a soft Brexit's any good. Maybe we should just stay in the EU altogether.
Well, this is it, and like I said to you earlier, I think everyone's aware, love or loathe Boris. I'm on the latter, but I mean, some people love him because of his bumbling character or whatever. We are all really, really aware that he is definitely very self-interested and pretty egocentric, so therefore in it for himself. If you take that into account and then sort of try and sum up his behavior, you sort of see what end it's falling on, because the way that I see it is he went Brexit, as far as I'm concerned, through self-interest. I don't think that he was an ardent believer that Brexit is somehow some Independence Day for Britain. I don't think that he's really ever been like that, and he certainly wasn't historically before he came out on that side. And weren't you saying earlier he had written the 2 articles to cover both sort of ways?
No, he absolutely did, didn't he? Before he decided which side he was going to come down on, he prepared himself 2 articles. I forget which newspaper it was, but 2 articles basically arguing either side of the case. I'm going to side with Cameron, we should stay in the EU. I'm going to say, fuck you, Cameron, let's leave the EU.
So that sort of tells you everything you need to know in some ways, though.
It certainly does. If I can draw a distinction then between, say, Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage, obviously neither of them are people who I hold a great degree of similarity with my own politics, but on Brexit at least, I think it's fair enough to say Farage, you know what, he's probably still on the ball with wanting Brexit. There were one or two people. There were 1 or 2 people who'd commented on my chat with him on LBC on that video, sort of saying, oh, Farage doesn't really care about Brexit. He's only out for Nigel Farage. Now, I certainly don't want to stand here and deny that Nigel Farage isn't out for Nigel Farage. I think that's a perfectly true statement. But I don't think the guy who's been basically, at the forefront of the Eurosceptic movement in this country for the better part of the last 25 years doesn't care about Brexit. I think that's one hell of a weird hobby to have if you don't actually care if we leave the EU or not.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, I
Yeah.
certainly do believe that. But I mean, he obviously is more than willing to pick up his EU pension. But we won't jump down that
Oh,
rabbit hole.
no, no, of course. Although I would add, if I were in his position, I would probably be equally hypocritical, and
Yeah.
I'd go, yeah, I'll take my EU pension as well.
Yeah. It's called
Why the
it's
hell?
called being a politician, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. But as far as Boris goes, I think there's a real distinction here because, like you've said, I don't think Boris had been sort of married ideologically to wanting to leave the EU for the longest of times. It was kind of a bit of a coming down on one side or the other in the time of the referendum, namely for self-interest as well, because I think he was hoping to set himself up for quite a nice position as running for PM, however things ended up going.
Yeah.
But and what I struggle with in a way is only in the last year or so, we've had countless occasions where Boris Johnson has been attempting to backseat drive Brexit, like undermining Theresa May before she's due to give a big speech or something like that, with his hard Brexit-esque suggestions. So he's still been somewhat active in terms of pursuing a hard Brexit from what I've seen as well.
Yeah, well, this is it. So, but I wasn't sure how much of that, as I've said, was more self-interest. Now, when it comes to Farage, I agree with you. I can buy the fact that he genuinely does want to Brexit in the hardest way possible. But with Boris, he's less convincing somehow. And it's almost like you can sort of see him changing the way the tide does. I certainly think that there has been almost a palpable shift in sentiment for a hard Brexit. I think that when Nigel Farage said the other day that Remainers have been really hardcore sort of fighting this and getting together and that kind of thing, I think he's right. I mean, I've definitely seen that. But I mean, what did he mean when he said that the Brexiters weren't? I mean, did he just mean that they were complacent, as in resting on the laurels a bit, or what?
I think so. If we put it in these terms, it's like, you know, the Brexiters were obviously fighting their hardest for this at the time of the referendum because, you know, that was the biggest opportunity for them to leave. And kind of prior to that, you know, obviously you had UKIP and Eurosceptic movements, and Brexit was kind of like the climax. Oh, weird word. Like it was essentially the climax. It was the peak. The referendum was the peak of their excitement and involvement and their movement to try and get us out of the EU. I think the Remainers, for their part, have been playing catch up somewhat because I think, you know, during the time of the referendum, they were making, you know, very good economic arguments for why to stay in the EU. You know, unfortunately, sometimes overstretched to the point where the whole country is going to collapse. But, you know, I'll be the first to concede there was plenty of shit being banded around on the Leave side as well. So I'm not trying to score points there. But I think the problem with the Remainers is they were probably very shocked that they lost the referendum. I don't think, I mean, even I as a Leaver, I wasn't expecting the referendum to go Leave. I thought it'd be very slim for Remain. So I think since then, in their efforts to want to try and reverse the referendum, you know, and I ought to sort of correct something I said in the Farage interview, because I think I'd said from day one the Remainers have been trying to undermine the vote, and I ought to change that to from day one the Remoaners have been trying to undermine the vote, because I do make a distinction between Remainers who, you know, accepts the result and are, you know, saying, okay, let's get on with it, that was the democratic choice, and those who from day one have wanted to undo it. But yeah, I basically think over the course of the last couple of years, you've had your Adonises, your Tony Blairs, you know, your SNP, Lib Dems, everyone else. All they have had basically is time to prepare for some sort of a strategy to stop Brexit. And, you know, the government have been there trying to do Brexit, and UKIP's just been there on the sidelines going, look at us, we're still relevant. Oh, no, we're not.
Well, I don't think, as we mentioned, I don't think they've had the best of luck when it comes to leadership. I mean, you've got your dear old mate Paul Nuttall, who obviously, Styes is here. Hello, Styes. I'll send you you can send the link, right? Yeah, you've got a nice shiny blue spanner. You can send the link whilst I'm discussing this. I don't think that really UKIP have had the best luck when it comes to leaders, have they? They've been really short-lived. And then we had dear old Paul Nuttall, who, yes, he was comedy gold when it came to the debates, but he was never going to go very far, was he? I mean, no. Harry Hill in a look, I'm working class hat is just, it's not going to fly. And I mean, even though you did get a beautiful selfie with him.
Oh, I'm gonna print that off and frame it one day.
It's absolutely amazing. I actually I did retweet that to Farage himself, and I was like, "You'd better take our friend's call." I mean, this selfie deserves it, if nothing else. Come on. But yeah, so since then they've then had this bloke who won over the Anne-Marie
Waters, yes.
Yeah, that sort of sounds like a weird product to me, but yeah.
And Anne-Marie Waters, yeah.
Yeah,
Something perfumey, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But actually, the secret is it smells of fascism. That's the secret ingredient there.
But I mean, is she actually sort of, because I heard all this stuff. I'll be honest, I don't know much about her because she didn't win. Of course, I'm not that familiar with who she is, and so I don't know whether you can fill us in a bit. And hey, Stizer.
And hello, Stizer, as well. I guess with Anne-Marie Waters, because I'll admit as well, I wasn't overly familiar with her character until the leadership election that she lost. But from what I've gathered, she's too far to the right for Nigel Farage's blood.
Right.
Farage himself has gone, oh, I'm a little bit dubious about her. I think that she wants to move the party in a bit too much of an anti-Muslim direction. Right. So I think probably if Nigel Farage is saying that about her, that's probably all you need to know, really.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. No, that's fair enough. And then, of course, we have this recent leader who's a bit of a no one. Nobody's really heard of him anyway. Every time I go Henry Bolton, they go, who?
He used to be in the army.
Yeah, I know. And he used to be a Lib. He used to be a Lib Dem.
Oh,
he used to be a Lib Dem. What does that say about who I just voted for, eh?
Tory. Well, I did say Lib Dems are Tories with a smile.
Tories with a smile. I know, Stizer. I've heard all the puns from you, but I mean, like.
He's a purple liberal, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's actually worse. I think I'd rather be a Tory with a smile than a purple liberal. But everyone goes, who? And now the only thing they know him for is by like cheating on his wife with a 25-year-old racist.
Yeah, he's just dumped so we can keep his job.
Yeah,
oh yes, have they split now?
Oh, is he just dumped?
Well, from what I've read in the Mirror, because obviously I was reading the papers, jumped. Goodbye, au revoir. But they're all saying he should step down because he fucking knew she was a racist anyway. So get out of here.
Yeah, and I think as well that it's difficult, isn't it? Like especially as a new leader of a party that's already pretty tainted.
With race,
Yeah, the way that somebody learns to know your name is because you cheated on your wife with some 25-year-old racist. It just doesn't, your careers are not off to like a bounding start. Let's put it that way.
Especially when everybody loves the royals in regards to Diana's kids.
Oh, definitely,
Out of it. But when it comes to Diana's kids, they get a free pass. Everybody knows that. And this whole thing is cool,
Well, I don't really understand. Like, the big issue, like Harry can just marry who he likes, right?
He's never going to be fucking king anyway. He's like 20th on the list. Literally.
Well, yeah. You've got to knock off Charles and then William and then all of William's kids as well. Bar some horrible skiing accident or something, I think Harry's pretty safe that he's not going to land on the throne. Probably.
That's why he's not asked. He's like, me king? Nah, I'm just going to have a laugh. Which he did for years, and now he's marrying some bird, and that's nice, And like I said, they're a bit more down to earth than the royals that we grew up with, kind of thing. They're both my age.
I think it's very interesting, though, that you have newspapers, the likes of the Daily Mail and other ones, printing these headlines going, vile racist attacks on Meghan Markle,
It says racist newspaper. Whoops, shit.
They must have been having they must have just been spinning for about an hour trying to go, oh, shit, which button do I press? Is it condemn racist remarks against the royal family or
immigrants?
Oh yeah, because it's not what they're used to, is it? Kind of, it's not too often you see Daily Mail headlines going, "Look at these nasty racist people saying nasty racist things."
But I mean, do you know what?
Doing it, that's right.
I always think though, I always expect the Daily Mail to have this horrendous view of pretty much everything. But yesterday there was a guy on it. You must have seen it, Swiss. When we were looking over Ma. He was on Mars. So, Stizy, you've probably seen it as well. They were going through. Have you seen Ma from yesterday?
I only seen a little bit of it. I had to go to sleep because I had to go to fucking Manchester Airport about 4 o'clock in the morning.
Bloody hell. Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
anyway, but I seen some of it. I only got up to the part where that guy is the new head of the Conservative Party.
Oh, yeah. Brandon
Whatever his face is.
Lewis.
Yeah. Andrew
Brandon,
Marr
yes,
said,
that sounds right.
Yeah, Andrew Marr said, how many members have you got? And he went, oh, let's not talk about numbers, shall we? And I was like, yeah.
I looked at a graph then. I actually looked at a graph and I was like, okay. That's why he's not mentioning numbers.
What were you saying about this Daily Mail bloke anywhere, Angels?
Yeah, the guy, you know, when they cover the papers.
Yes.
And they had something like the deputy editor or whatever of the Daily Mail. And I'm like, oh, he's going to be horrendous. And he was actually surprisingly reasonable and really quite sort of straight up, like bang on when it came to sort of summing things up and discussing the stories and stuff. And I thought, what are you doing?
Well,
like working for the Mail?
To be fair, did you see the text?
No.
It's not like you could ever defend that. I mean, that was worse than what Trump said. Trump just called countries.
Are you talking about
him a racist? That's a bit weird, but whatever.
Sorry, are you talking about what's his name? Henry Bolton's mistress?
Yeah,
that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I was just talking about the bloke who works for the Mail that was covering the papers. However, that was one of the major stories, so it's quite a nice, as you would say, segue into, back into this. I mean, yeah, it was horrendous, and I would in no way stand up for that kind of thing. It's completely and utterly unacceptable. It was, however, her private text messages, which I don't understand why because people probably say stupid shit like that the whole time.
Unless
you know what I mean?
They don't, unless you're racist. And this is a funny thing: is this was actually on MSNBC the other day. Joe, the guy who runs it, Morning Joe, said to some fella, "Oh, you know what it's like when your granddad gets a bit senile and he starts saying crazy shit." And the fella, one of the guys he was talking to on the co-host or guest or whatever, said, "Unless you're a racist, no, they don't say crazy shit like nigger or whatever. Unless you are a racist."
No. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. It's not the kind of thing that any of us would be texting each other, is it? But I'm just saying, it was still her private text messages, because the way that it was coming across, it was like she had said it publicly. Yeah, you know.
Those were my initial thoughts on it. At first, I thought that these were tweets or something that she'd sent out. But then I later found, when I was covering it in the Sunday stream, I found out during the course of it, oh no shit, these were just messages that she was sending to somebody.
Well, I mean, the fact is, if someone's going to say that, and she is high profile, I don't give a fuck what anyone says. If you're the leader of UKIP, you're still high profile in this country, right? You just are. Someone's obviously got the text and sold them to the newspapers or some shit. That's
except for the problem that nobody actually knows your name.
Well,
apparently.
I mean, did she deny the claims? No.
Well, she didn't deny them. All she said was, obviously the language I used was, awful. But I feel that they've been taken out of context slightly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a racist. Take me out of context because I said the word.
Yeah.
How can you
say take it out of context when you're just blatantly being racist?
Well, I think I think you're absolutely right.
When you engage in sex with a woman, I'm pretty sure you should know what she's like by then. Are you telling me that tit didn't know she was a racist from the get-go? I'm just saying.
I imagine that, if they're on Tinder or OkCupid or whatever it is, it's probably something you stick in your profile. Henry Bolton, 52, UKIP leader, likes some racist.
Or stick elsewhere for that matter. But yeah. No, I think it's pretty obvious that he knew that she was a racist. But I mean, he probably didn't care. He's getting a 25-year-old bit of arse, and like he cheated on his wife for her, so he's obviously that type of guy. So whatever.
Well, that's why I'm saying he should go anyway, because he obviously fucking knew, didn't he? That'd be stupid.
I just want to add one thing on what you were saying a little bit earlier on about the Daily Mail contributor. One of my favourite journalists and writers on the right, Peter Hitchens, despite the fact we probably disagree on more things than we agree on, he writes for, I think it's the Mail on Sunday he writes for, slightly distinct from the Mail, but still same ballpark.
It's a lot better, actually, a lot better.
and it's on.
Yeah. But yeah, I just thought I'd add to that. I obviously deeply, disagree with the overall message and direction that the Daily Mail is, and sort of, the sort of hatred that they're spewing out all the time. But it doesn't in itself mean that there aren't individuals who either work for it or may write articles in it that don't have their own.
I like it.
Aren't journalistically valid. At least it's just the newspaper as a whole is generally trash.
I like Isabel Hartman. She writes for the Spectator. She's to the right, but she's pretty okay. It's the same newspaper that the fucking idiot writes for, who's definitely to the right. Fraser Nelson, I think it is. But he writes.
Oh, I know him.
I don't mind Fraser Nelson.
He's a bit of a tip, but he's all right.
Yeah, he's certainly not that objectionable.
No, he's not. That's what I'm saying. Like, you can listen to the right news leading people and still think you're okay. I suppose, being fair. It's just the ones that go over the top who are complete tits.
Yeah, I think what it is too is that
Emma,
lots of people. No, it's fine. But when we're talking about papers, I always do watch the papers because it's nice to see sort of not only the stories they cover but how they cover them. But I think that you're right. I guess I am probably judging the Daily Mail by its like hate-filled, ridiculous, like awful, poisonous, shouty headlines. Whereas, of course, not everyone who works there is gonna be like that, are they? So.
No, but the thing is, I'd agree with that. But the thing is, if the main writer and the headlines that you're spouting out, people might get a different opinions of said paper. Let's face it, they are the most racist fucking paper in the fucking country. Because every other headline is...
Well, along with I would say the Express is pretty... Yeah, the Express is bad as well.
The Daily Mail's like the rag of the right. If you
Oh, can I just say, I'm now officially like... I'm ticking a box for working class because I read The Guardian and it's now a tabloid.
Oh, wow. Oh, is that the demographic shift now?
Yeah, it's now a tabloid. No, it's clearly to save money because all newspapers are going bust. But it doesn't have a large readership, does it, compared to the others? Because it's obviously
no papers do really anymore.
No, I mean they're all dropping, but it's particularly because it's obviously not. Scummy ones have the highest readership, and according to quality, it sort of goes down. Which
I would say,
sums up the state of the country.
In all fairness, The Guardian is free on the internet.
It actually has. That's true, but I think that they invested in it quite early, didn't they? Because their site is massively widely used, and they do have a bloody good website compared to the others.
You don't get all that spammy shit on it, actually.
Yeah, that's true. And they do have good writers for The Guardian, to be honest, across the spectrum as well. So,
just out of interest, could I ask both of you? Obviously, I know that you buy The Guardian, Angels, but both offline and online. Where do you guys tend to get? Where's your preferred go-to sources of news if you're going to read something? Where do you find yourself usually reading?
All of them.
Yeah, I tend to read all of them, but I'm actually a subscriber online to The Guardian as well. So I pay monthly and I get it free in Waitrose.
Oh, very nice.
Well, the thing is, I think if you're going to be political, I think
you have to read across the spectrum.
You cut off your nose to spite your face, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only newspaper that I ever used to buy was the Eye, the little mini independent, and that was because it used to be 20p. Oh, those were the days back when the Eye was 20p. But as far as reading stuff online goes, I'd say the most frequent sources I go to are the Guardian, the Independent, the Telegraph, sometimes the Times or the Financial Times, and then
the FT is good for like literal, like actual economic impact stuff and articles and people writing for it who tend to be really good.
Some good tech stuff in the Telegraph.
And then
page is big. It's the biggest newspaper on sale, actually. It's fucking huge.
Sorry, Swiss.
I was going to say the B5 with the Telegraph though is they keep wanting me to sign up to their subscription service to read their articles, and I'm like, No, hang on a minute, Telegraph. I'm going out of my way already to read shit from your Tory propaganda. I'm not going to be paying you money as well for the privilege of doing so.
Same with the Spectator though. I don't like subscription services, mainly because I can't afford it. But second is, why would I fucking want to give you that shit anyway? Because most of the stuff that they write's opinionated. You can get most of your facts off BBC. Fuck's sake.
I was just chatting to my brother about an hour or so ago, the one who's off in China at the moment. We've got this app where we leave each other messages, and he was telling me, he told me something really funny, that because in China, obviously, they don't really report on UK news all that often. There might be like an odd bit about Brexit in an article of a newspaper here or there, but that's generally it. He says that his two main sources of getting news while he's away are Russia Today and me.
Oh wow!
like he would go on my YouTube channel and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to find out what's going on in the UK." Like Matt makes videos about that, so he'll probably know.
Yeah, well, to be honest, you're probably giving him because you make your views pretty apparent, but at the same time, when you cover stuff, you're not at all biased. So you're probably quite a good bet in some ways. I mean, my 70-odd-year-old mum thinks that, for God's sake. She's probably one of your oldest subs. She's like, oh yes, he makes very, very factual videos, doesn't he? Very covers them really well. And I was like, yeah, I'll tell him that. He'll be really proud. Well, she's a member, for fuck's sake. I told you that.
Oh, is she? Oh god, fuck, I'm sorry. Anyway, back to the topic.
She's Welsh, of course she's Labour. I mean, come on.
That has to.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, okay, whatever. Back to the point. Lies.
The beginning of the end of Brexit.
It's not.
No, but it doesn't look good. I have to admit, though, it sort of looks increasingly not good. Let's put it that way.
Farage said we should have another one so we can end it, right? Because more people will vote to leave in the next one. He didn't say let's fucking have a referendum just because. And Johnson is a tit anyway.
Well, we know that, but I mean, to Swiss though, because Swiss, this is true, right? When you chatted to Farage, he was backsliding somewhat on the comments because I looked up at what he had actually said compared to what he told you on air.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, towards the end of our chat, I did put it to him. I said to him, I saw you on the The Right Stuff, that was it. I saw you on The Right Stuff this morning, and it sounded like you were saying that perhaps another referendum would be a good idea because it would put the issue to bed. And regardless of whatever he'd said earlier on in the day, by that point in the evening, he was very, very clear that no, I don't want a second referendum.
But
I'm just saying
see it coming.
Yeah. So I don't know whether him saying two different things in the same day was calculated, whether it was a fuck up, whether he said one thing and was backtracking, but I'm willing to believe, as far as Farage goes, that he doesn't wish there to be another referendum. But yeah, perhaps he's seeing the writing on the wall, going, "Oh, there's an awful lot of people clamouring for one. Maybe we ought to be prepared."
Well, he didn't say that. I mean, this is the thing about newspapers. That's why don't. News is information. You collect information and then sort it out. What happened was he went on a TV show, which was, I think it was Good Morning Britain first or some shit on ITV or whatever. It could have even been that other show. And said, referendum, yeah, whatever. And the reason why I said that is because he said he fears exactly
the Remainers are getting together.
Yes, right. And he was saying is the only way to get around that problem, if that was the case, is to probably hold a second referendum, because he was asked
in order to put it to bed, sort of thing, as opposed to what he wanted.
It, yeah. And then when he was asked about the government and all that, he was saying that the government's useless.
That they backsliding and they're useless, sort of thing.
So I mean that was the main actual facts, and then it blew out of proportion. Oh my God, Farage wants a second referendum. That's what tabloid newspapers are there to do: sell you a headline.
Well, this is true, but what I'm saying is to even say something remotely linked to that, though, is obviously going to be controversial coming from him, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll absolutely accept that. The news ran with it that day in an incredibly big way, but still, if I were Farage and I wanted to be getting across the idea of watch out, leavers, the Remainers might be trying to hold a second ref, maybe we ought to be prepared for one. I'm not sure if I would have started off my day by going, you know what, maybe a second referendum's a good idea. Yeah, I would have gone a totally different way about that. Unless, of course, he was trying to just grab himself a load of attention to draw more people to his LBC show on the evening, which, in a sense, is exactly what he did, seeing as he had a few of us drift over at the very least.
I know, and I got through just as he goes, right, it's the end of my show. And I was like, fuck you, I was about to shamelessly plug Captain Switzerland on YouTube.
Well, I would say, like I said, I think he's right. And I think we know this as people who voted Leave and Remain, is that, look, Parliament's full of more Remainers, and this is even more important. It hasn't even gone to the Houses of Lords yet. That place has got even more fucking Remainers in it. In the Tory party, Heseltine and all them fucking dudes. They're not having any of that shit. And Heseltine said, I'm going to die before you guys pass this shit.
Yeah, he did.
Fuck knows what's going to happen there. I mean, I think when
they're going to send everything back about 2 or 3 times. I think.
Whispers are that actually the Labour Party are going to stay in the customs union.
And the single market, yeah.
Well, Corbyn's been very keen to stress that he wants to stay in a customs union, but he isn't specifying whether it's the customs union or just another customs union.
Can I just quickly interrupt to say hi, Rowan? I was just seeing that Rowan's joined, and also James. I'm not ignoring James Fielding in the chat. I wanted to actually mention quite a few times. He had mentioned earlier when we were talking about journalists that Dan Hodges is a good journalist in the Man on Sunday. I completely agree with that. I've read quite a lot of his articles online, and I think he's very good as well. So yeah, going back to the sort of the second referendum thing, you reckon that we will have a second referendum? James Fielding does.
He says we'll have a second referendum in the next 10 years, I reckon.
Oh, right.
Well,
that's what James Fielding says, at least.
What are you guys' thoughts on it, anyway?
Well, I don't think we will. I don't think we're going to leave. I think we have to be close to the European Union, as much as we dislike that idea.
You have to sort of viably for trade, etc.
Yeah, because it's pure economically makes sense to be trading with the fucking.
I think it's funny though because I've noticed that there's a lot of people that seem to be in the position of having voted Leave have changed their mind and probably would vote Remain, and there's also Remainers who have changed their mind and would vote Brexit. So that would probably still, have the result at pretty much the same as what it was before, which is interesting.
I think you're right for a start, but what I also think is that I think that Leave would not win by an increased majority for a start, but I actually think that they may have done. Was it not a total cock up with our government? Like the way it's been handled is extremely off-putting. Like it doesn't look good for the Leave vote as a general rule. Like,
well, no, because I'm still very much annoyed at the fact that the whole of the Leave campaign largely was based on misconceptions and mistruths.
That's a fabrication, if we're honest.
Yeah, and also that the Remain campaign was not
just trying
to scare people as opposed to here are all the benefits of staying in the EU, etc. So it was just a lot of it was just based on lying to people.
Well,
I'll agree with you.
Sorry. It's just a point. I mean, look, we can disagree on the pros and cons, but we're not politicians. We're just the plebs. These guys have vested interests for one reason or another. So
although often I think we speak more sense than a lot of them, to be fair.
Of course we do, because we've got no constraints to tell the truth. These idiots want to lie to your face even on question time. Tell you one fucking thing, and then the next minute, whatever.
What I will say though, is I was watching Jeremy Corbyn yesterday on Peston, and it's actually one of the first times that I've noticed him say something wrong. And I was like, wait a second, Jeremy, I think you'll find. And he said he said something along the lines of any country that wants to be in the EU has to remain in the single market and customs union or something along.
That's not actually true. No.
I was like, actually no, like Iceland, Norway and Switzerland are all in the single market and customs union, are in the EEA and EFTA. And not in the EU. So
no, but the EFTA thing is an EU trade agreement. That's the point. In fact, the first people to join that was in Sweden, I think. Yeah,
but I just the way that he said it, I don't think he was very specific and clarified.
Well, the rules have changed, and that's the point. Is we can't be in the single market and have our own border control.
Special,
That's not how
yeah.
it works.
Yeah, they still want to maintain the 4 freedoms, which includes freedom of movement.
Yeah.
So, not
Yeah.
that
You
I
have to
ever
have it.
found freedom of movement a problem anyway. I really don't at all find it a
Well, you
problem.
wouldn't because you've got a job.
Yeah.
Well, no, but it's not only that. There's very little to say that EU migrants are like a burden to this country. Very little evidence supporting that. It's
there
a
is
perception
no,
and fact.
No, there is no evidence to support that. But what it does show is that movement of people puts pressure on public services. We all know that's
Well, it does when they're systematically starved of funding. Yeah, of course.
yeah. Well, that's the point. Is if the government literally did what they were supposed to, which is spend money on stuff like that, then it wouldn't be a problem. But the fact is,
Yeah, but I mean, you can't like.
that hasn't done that.
Yeah, but that's fair enough. But then you can't be like, oh, look, there's a squirrel tactic, because it's a bit like, oh, let's just blame the EU migrants as opposed to systematic underfunding of public services that we know about.
No, but it's not. But this is the point. You can't be narrow-minded and say it's one or the other. If we know it's a fact,
Well, I mean, it doesn't help, obviously.
No, it doesn't. But that's.
But it's more like prevention, not cause. Like, you need to actually nip it in the bud. You need to solve the problem where it really is, as opposed to, basically making up constructing a straw man and saying, let's just blame EU migrants, when it's bullshit.
No, I blaming EU migrants. The problem is the actual idea of the EU is the fucking problem. That's the fucking problem.
Okay.
Because
Carry on, Swift.
it was making more money before we became the single currency market. We actually traded more, and all the countries were wealthier until the fucking EU stopped this thing called on the EU. Look at Greece. Italy hasn't made a fucking gain in its GDP since it joined the euro. Hello.
Yeah. Carry on, Swift, and then I'll cover a couple of comments. Carry on.
Okay, yeah. I think as far as the migration issue goes, I think certainly it's used as like you said, a crutch or a straw man for people on the right who'd like to blame migration for most of the country's woes. However, I would say that it's not purely black or white. I think that on the opposite side of the argument, whether you want to call it the Remain side or the left side during the referendum debate, it was generally the opposite. The position was put across saying, but look at the statistics. All of the migration is really good for the economy. And I think the truth lies somewhere closer to the middle, where you can say, yes, the influx of cheap labor and migration has been very beneficial to the economy. However, it doesn't mean that it doesn't also contain its own detriments in terms of either strains on services or
contributing to low wages, etc., etc.
Indeed, yeah, or companies or businesses sort of undercutting the minimum wage to which is illegal, first of all, but it's still happening. So I think. Yeah, I think it's wise just to take a wider view of it and say, it's absolutely wrong for migration to be painted as the absolute devil and the cause of all of our problems. But nonetheless, there are some quite legitimate concerns that do need to be addressed with the levels of migration we have. I'd say that's probably a fair way to put it.
I mean, I agree. And I'm pretty sure all 4 of us would agree on that, regardless where we're coming at it from. But what I find highly ironic is that the people who live in the areas with the largest amounts of migration, like the actual proven biggest amounts of migration, appear to be the least bothered by it. Whereas
people with less migration are really, really bothered by it.
So we are talking about the.
Hello.
What happened?
We might have lost Angels, I think.
No, she was talking in full flow. I thought I interrupted her.
No, I think we've lost her. I think maybe she's got disconnected from the Hangout or something. She might be back in a second.
Someone cut her off.
Oh dear.
Me, bitch.
But as far as the sort of the main question of the stream goes, though, the beginning of the end for Brexit following Farage and Boris's remarks. I think you've said already, Sty. Did you? What had you said on it? Did you say you thought?
Well, I would say, like, let's look at it this way. If the government backpedals on this question, or whatever, we're leaving. That's political suicide, not just for them, but for any party to do that, because we pride ourselves on this. Oh, we're a democracy thing. That's not good. Most of the people, if you watch them on Question Time, just say, get the fuck on with it and just get us a good deal. you know, and that's what the population wants. So if they backpedal, that's not a great idea.
Sorry about that. I think my internet just cut out.
Yes.
Oh, welcome back.
Welcome back. But I would say the subtleties maybe can change in that regards to single market / customs union. Now that can only be changed if the EU says we're going to allow that. You know, we could get a bespoke deal where that is where that's a possibility, because let's face it, when Cameron went over there and tried to get the deal that we're all talking about right now, he told them to piss off. But he probably said, really if you don't give us a deal, they're going to vote anyway.
But so, my problem with, you know, audience people in Question Time, whatever program it is, who say, let's just get on with it and let's stop talking about it. Why can't we just leave? And that whole mentality just sounds very generic, and it doesn't sound like they want to know any amount of detail. So, like, for example, Nicola Sturgeon this morning made a massive speech about the fact that Scotland wanted to stay in the single market and customs union and get the best deal possible for her country.
But that's Nicola Sturgeon.
And it's like, do you not realise that, you know, people who voted to leave, like, a lot of them don't want to understand the ins and outs of, you know, every economic statistic and whatever, and they just want to, like, let's just leave. It's like, but it's more complicated than that, and I really want you to understand.
Yeah, but the sad truth is that people do not want to hear it.
I'd like to challenge that just a little bit quickly, though, because I think that it's also fair to say that there are a number of people who support leave out there who are aware of the economic arguments, or of the situation that yes, we're going to see perhaps a downturn in GDP in the short term, but they support leave in spite of that.
Yeah, and they'll carry on and do it anyway. Like, oh, I don't care because.
No,
Brexit.
I don't care because I actually believe in democracy. That's why I don't want to be a part of a super state. I don't know why people don't understand this. I didn't vote to leave the sovereignty of my nation to a bunch of fucking bureaucrats.
Yeah, but I think this is being overplayed.
No, this is the point, right? My grandfather, probably yours, died in a fucking war and many wars before that. Why? For fucking our values and our system. Now, if you want to call that like fucking nationalism, yes, it is. Because I don't want to die for the bureaucratic twat, but I would die for my queen. And my queen doesn't mean the queen. It means people who live in Britain. That's the difference. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna pretend that I'm French or Spanish. Yes, I love the French and Spanish and all that shit. But I'm British. I'm sorry. Did I forget that I was born in this little island we call Great Britain? I love the Scots, but I would give them the choice to be independent.
See, I find
the choice as a country to be independent, and we voted to leave.
This is exactly the propaganda that people are swallowing, right? It's almost like
how's that propaganda?
Because
oh my God, I've just told you the.
Let me finish. It's my channel. Let me finish. Shut up,
don't call it propaganda then, because that's bullshit.
Total and utter bullshit. Come on.
Fuck off.
And now, look, people are swallowing this hook, line, and sinker, and it's of course total bollocks. Anyone with half a brain can see that. It's somehow this idea that people wanting to remain within a single market or whatever it is somehow have lost the national identity. Now that's just bullshit. I mean, you can be a Remain voter and a patriot. It's not one or the other. It's this polarized view of it, this simplistic, stupid.
It's like I voted Remain, so therefore I don't care about my country. Of course I do. Absolutely I do.
No, now that's bollocks.
Well, look, this is what's being pushed, Isa. It is being pushed in ahead of a lot.
Let's look at the facts. The laws of this land are subject to the laws of a fucking idea, not a fucking country. An idea. The idea is called the European Union. I will always be European. But I don't want to be a part of a bureaucratic, never audited fucking bullshit scenario. Get that shit straight.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Get that shit straight. But that's what the European is. The European Union is a fucking concept. It's an idea. Let's wave the fucking European flag. I'm sorry, but no.
Well, look, that's fine. And I know where you're coming from because we debated it until the earth's end, pretty much. But I just quickly want to go over a couple of comments as well because we're ignoring the guys in the chat. Jane said, it depends where you are on the political spectrum, but I don't think that Parliament will reject the deal. and this government will last to 2020 at least. See, I don't think it will, personally. I think that it will be a general election after 2019, but we'll see. James Fielding says people are bored of Brexit, to be honest. Probably doesn't help with the awful government and the opposition itself. Well, yeah, I'd agree with that. I think we're all pretty bored of Brexit at this point. Joe, the only hope that Parliament will reject the deal, I guess, if Remainer MPs know for certain that if they would reject the deal, it will result in a vote back to the public. Cameron said that the Tories have fucked it all. Parliament will reject the deal and we're going to get a second referendum. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's almost an inevitability then at this point?
No, we're never getting a second referendum.
No, but I mean, you know, going back to the country with the deal with an option to bail out.
No, that's not going to happen either.
I'll give my thoughts on it a sec because I don't think we've actually asked Rowan about this since she's...
No. Yeah. Can you ask her for... yeah, so I will be back in 20 seconds, guys.
All right, no problem. Yeah, so Rowan, prospect of a second referendum, how likely do you think that is then?
Oh gosh, I actually have no idea about this because it's being bandied around by every politician and their mother saying, let's have a second referendum. Let's not, and we're not going to. But I mean, I think it would be a good idea to have a referendum on when we eventually get a deal, and whether it's in Parliament or given to the people. I think it would be a good idea to discuss and make a decision on what we want and what is the best deal, but not necessarily to have another in-out referendum, because I think that would be quite detrimental.
We can't even have a referendum on the fucking deal. That's just stupid.
But hypothetically then, if there were to be a referendum on the terms of the deal rather than an in-out referendum, how would we imagine sort of the questions on the ballot paper going? Would it be something like either accept the deal that we've negotiated or leave without a deal, or some other variation?
I guess so. I wouldn't know where to start, to be honest, because it's so complicated. And again, you'd have to be quite informed. And I don't think that is something that the public is probably ready for at this point.
They're not asked about it. That's the point.
No.
The reason why we're not going to have a referendum is because the government knows quite well what they're doing. We're not going to be a part of the EU because they're going in a complete different direction than Britain. Just live with that fact. We're still European as people. You can still go to fucking Spain on holiday. We're just not going to be in this bureaucratic club. That's it. That's the only thing that's going to change. We're still going to be able to trade with them and do all that mad shit. We're just not going to be in a bureaucratic big monster that's never been audited since its creation.
So by saying that, you're saying that you would be prepared to take an economic hit.
Says who?
To the economy. I'm not. No, but I'm just hypothetically, if it were to happen, if we were to get
for liberty,
hit.
Yes.
I'd agree as well.
Yes. To make the laws here, would I be willing to take, let's say, randomly, since it's hypothetical, a 2% cut in GDP? Yes, is the answer.
I'll add to that quickly and say that even during the time of the referendum campaign itself, we were being warned by the Remain side that we faced an instant economic catastrophe if we were to leave. So I voted leave full in the knowledge that there were all of these warnings that it would be challenging for the economy, that we might see a bit of a downturn, that we could take a bit of a hit. That was all factored into my vote to leave. Mm-hmm. And so far as things go, actually, They haven't actually panned out as badly as many of the projections have predicted. Yes, we're still faced in a slightly worse position than we were previously, but things aren't actually as bad as the predictions were. And I voted leave knowing what the predictions were in the first place.
Just to add on to your point, Swiss, things have gone exactly how they would have been anyway. The only thing that happened to the UK when we decided to leave was a correction in the pound. Nothing else happened. A correction in the pound is normal, but nothing else has happened other than that, majorly, I should say, other than the correction in the pound. And if you grew up as long as I was, every cunt was whining that the pound was too high anyway.
Well, and the pound's nearly back to where it was at the time of the referendum, for that matter, as well. It's been climbing for the last year and a half.
Yeah, but 10 cents now, $1.37 to the dollar. I remember the good old days when it was $1.57 to the pound.
Can I just quickly interject to say that was the best work call ever? We're gonna get a new viewer in a second, who's a colleague of mine. And also, can I just say, how dare work call me? Don't they know I'm busy streaming?
No, if you lived in Germany, they're not allowed to.
Well, look,
That's true.
she's joining, and I'm like, oh, just so you know, there's a contributor on who you might not agree with, and she goes, "Is that shouty guy from Liverpool?" I'm like, yes.
Well, at least I'm famous in some part.
Oh, exactly. Internationally renowned, one might say.
For my shoutiness.
Certainly.
Is that shouty guy from Liverpool? I was like, you have to join and watch it.
So best behaviour now, Stizer, if we're going to have some
no.
I
think she loves a bit of drama, probably.
And actually to Rowan as well. This, for me, right, for me, let's say Remainers would have won. And this is my problem with the whole vote. On both sides, actually. I've always thought that Britain has always been half-assed when it came to Europe anyway. Because when I was growing up...
You mean one way or another sort of thing?
Yeah, we won our cake and eat it as Britain, right? And that's always pissed me off in general, right? I thought when the European Union got going, why aren't we full members? Why don't we just fucking go, fuck it, let's just fucking join, get it over and done with. And we can still keep the Queen, that's not a big fucking deal. She's just the head of state. Change our money to funny money, whatever. Let's just join. Oh no, can't be having that because we're special, because we're Brits, apparently. And the whole referendum thing has been going on under the I don't know what you call that, subliminally.
Under the radar.
Yeah,
almost.
it's like, oh, we hate the Europeans, which is not true, obviously. But we think we're special, Britain, history, whatever. And up until this point, we've never had a say, really, because we've been dragged into the Lisbon Treaty and other treaties. But when we got the referendum, I think the shock to the system was not the fact that the people voted the way they did. It's the fact that the government was so inept not to think that we wouldn't vote that way. So for me,
I agree with that.
If we would have joined, I would have said on the ballot paper what the referendum should say is: should we be full members of the European Union or should we not be full members of the European Union? That's what it should have said on the ballot paper. Because leaving the European Union ain't the same thing as being full members or in regards to not members, if you get my point. So then you would get a clear choice. We're in the EU or we're not in the EU. Now, the European Union is an institution with many layers. So that's why we're fucked, because we're trying to figure out which layer of the EU we want to try and stay in, which is why you get the Labour Party fluffing its lines, so to speak, and why the Tories get battered for the same reason.
Yeah, that is,
EU, you know.
That is a problem that I find, that, you know, because the vote was a binary question, you know, do you want to be a member of the EU, yes or no? It means that following that result, the Leave side, the Remain side, everyone and their dog basically has been able to interpret whatever they want into what that result was. Now, you know, obviously as a Brexiteer, I have my own very distinct feelings about what a vote to leave the European Union ought to mean. Yeah. But I accept that within the ambiguity of that question, there's been equal wiggle room for the Remainers to be able to say, oh, but, you know, it didn't say leave the single market. It didn't say leave the customs union. So do we have to? But from my perspective, at least, I feel that in order for leaving to actually make us meaningfully distinct from the EU in any way, you kind of need to. Otherwise, it does result in a Brexit in name only, essentially.
Well, this is exactly what we were talking about, isn't it? It is essentially so, and this is exactly why I sent you. I know it was so early. I'm sorry to have woken you up with that, but the screenshot of Boris going, I'd rather remain if it's just a soft Brexit, because what he was obviously trying to say was, if it's basically the same deal and accepting the same, what is interpreted by some as weaknesses, but not having any of the benefits, then why don't we just stay? Because otherwise, like, we're basically just getting a worse deal for no reason.
Well, right now it could be in the EU's court. And I go back to the point about David Cameron. He went there and said, give us a better deal, and these idiots won't vote. He came back with nothing. The idiots voted. Oh, fuck. So I bet the EU already must have had a contingency plan for that. Because he made it known then, right, that he was going to let us have a referendum. So they probably thought, well, if we go through the rigmarole of it, let's just give them the stupid fucking thing where the ECJ might be in there somewhere and give them this whole control your border crap. and they'll still be in it.
Oh,
Give
they're
us 10
definitely going to
billion.
throw crumbs. Like, there's absolutely no doubt. But it's whether or not people are going to think that that's a good deal, and whether or not they're going to, quote unquote, fall for it or not, or swallow it or buy it or whatever you want to say.
Well, I just read an article the other day that was saying that the EU is going to lose 650 billion quid or some shit from our
Yeah,
departure
they are
over 10
actually
years.
also making contingency plans as far as the money was concerned. That's true. I went to a lecture the other day on this, actually.
Yeah, the budget. I mean, the best thing for both parties is we say, okay, we still want access to your shitty market because it's important for both of us, and you want access to us. We're still going to cough up 5 billion, but we're not going to give you the other 5 because we want 2 things. We want our own border controls because we're a fucking island, which makes sense. And second of all, stop fucking around with the ECJ because we tried to get rid of Abu Hamza for the best part of 15 fucking years, and you titheads kept saying no. We eventually had to bribe fucking where is Jordan so we could get him over there.
Just on that one, sorry, just on that one really quickly, Stizer, was that the European Court of Justice or was that the European Court of Human Rights?
Human
It was
rights.
human rights, I think, not justice.
we help-
That's
which we help
different. That's
right
not
by
under
them.
jurisdiction of the ECJ.
And the Tories want to get rid of it. Alarming.
Well, you know,
Got it, but they wouldn't let us deport him. Apparently. 'Cause
so,
we wanted to deport him.
on the final deal is that when it does go back to Parliament, how do you think it's going to go? I see the side chat discussing this.
That's going to be an interesting one.
It will, because if you think about like the lack of a majority, etc., and you know, people voting with the opposition and stuff.
I call election. I think we're going to have another election.
So yeah, quite a few people have been saying that recently.
What would it be then? So if it were to go to Parliament at the end of whenever they decide to make the decision, would it be do you want to accept whatever deal that we get or crash out on WTO?
No, they have a meaningful vote now, so they can actually turn down the whole lot and send them back to renegotiate.
No, they won't go back. This is the point. They can't go back because it takes.
They now have the right to do it, though. Is what I'm saying.
That's true, but what I'm saying is, I don't think it'll get there. I think what's going to happen is if Parliament votes no.
Sorry about the noise, by the way. I'm brushing my hair.
It's fine. If Parliament votes no, we're going to have an election. That's the only way you're going to settle that. And you're going to have Labour Party saying this, and you're going to have the Tories saying that, and then we're going to vote in a general election. We'll put the whole deal on hold, and then whoever comes out of that madness called an election will will
It's certainly not going to be clean, is it?
But I don't even think that the EU is going to want to even renegotiate if it's something that we don't like. They're just going to be like, well, this is
just sort it out yourselves, kind of
get
thing.
what you're given, and we're not going to.
It's not going to be a renegotiation. We're going to come back with a deal, and then if Parliament votes no, we're going to have an election.
Like it or lump it.
And then we're going to do the whole like it or lump it part with a different party in power. I think Labour's going to get in. I think Labour will soften up the Brexit. To be fair,
frankly, any party should be getting in at this point. I mean, this government is
atrocious. Yeah.
I can't even. I don't even have words for how horrendous.
Anyone who is still voting for this party at this point,
yeah.
I'll crack at this point.
I'd like to add one point about the support for the Tories at the moment, which I don't think we've spoken about yet, and that's obviously before the election last year, we saw the support for UKIP absolutely plummet, and I think at least half of the UKIP vote, probably a fair bit more, was distributed to the Conservatives.
Yeah, probably more.
Yeah, and obviously if the Conservatives either do call another referendum or they do go for sort of a wishy-washy soft Brexit or any of these things, then I think there's a lot of UKIP support there that's holding firm in the Conservatives right now because they are saying, okay, the Conservatives are the party of government, they are on the right, we're hoping that they stand the best chance of doing Brexit for us. But if Brexit doesn't pan out the way that those UKIP supporters were hoping,
they'll go back to UKIP and the Conservative vote will be even more demolished.
Yeah, because the Tories could see themselves then down to about 35% support, and then that would allow Labour to walk into number 10.
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. I'm sorry, factually wrong.
Oh, I mean, what you like pronounce things like the Pope all of a sudden, do you?
Well, I listened. I'm just saying.
Okay. Why do you think we're wrong?
In the election for the European Union, MPs or EMPs, whatever the fuck you call
MEPs,
yeah. the vast majority weren't actually Conservative voters. They were Labour voters.
They were UKIP.
No, they were Labour
Yeah, and
voters.
UKIP,
Hold on a minute.
UKIP
Can I
MEPs.
just give you a timeline, please, for why I said you
Yes.
wrong? In the
Okay.
election, but I just want to make sure that I
No,
want the
I
viewers to
know.
understand as
Yeah.
well. So we had the EU elections referendum thingy. Elections, not referendum. We had the
Oh,
EU elections, right?
2014.
Yeah, UKIP
Yep.
won that. The vast majority of their supporters were actually Labour voters. At the same
Mm.
time, someone called Ed Miliband was trying to win an election, if you remember.
Yeah.
His voters went to the Tories because they wanted Brexit, because David Cameron promised a referendum. Now, in regards to what's happening next, the UKIP voters are still Labour voters who hate the Tories but still want Brexit, which
Yeah,
we
so-
talked about the other day, Mr.
I know,
Smith.
and this
Yes,
is why
yes,
we feel so torn.
this is the rock. This is the rock and the hard place. They're not necessarily going to go back to the Tories, right? But they might hate how the country's run more than they hate or will accept the Brexit scenario.
I absolutely take the point that you're making, Sty, which was that there was a very high proportion of Labour supporters who also switched to UKIP back in that European Parliament election.
I love Nigel Farage at that point, for fuck's sake.
But the point that I'm making, though, is that if you look specifically in the run-up to the 2017 general election, you saw the UKIP support collapse, and they've done polling and analysis on it since, and it's argued that as many as about 2/3 of these supporters went to the Tories. Some of them did go to Labour. There was absolutely some that went to Labour, but there are more former 2015 UKIP voters being retained in support for the Tories right now than there are Labour. So I think that if the Tories fuck up Brexit, they're the ones who stand to lose the biggest amongst that former
Agree.
UKIP demographic.
And I think that would mean
fucked it up.
Well, I think that would mean a Labour government by default too.
Yes.
So, like, even if they didn't get a large, or indeed a huge, massive proportion of the vote share, I think that by default, by that amount of people splitting the Conservative vote, and the fact that they're not going to be popular anyway, clearly because they're a total clusterfuck. Yeah, it sort of means that they'll lose by default if that happens.
Well, a lot of Conservatives that I've seen on Theresa May, they're like, "Fuck Theresa May, she's a traitor."
I know a lot of Tories. Oh yeah, I know a lot of
vote. Well, I think Labour's going to win the next election anyway, but that's just my own opinion.
Well, I also think that at this point it's basically an open goal. I mean, it's so bad now. It's almost like the mask has slipped so badly that it's just an embarrassment at this stage.
But what I worry about is the last election last year. I mean, that was, anyone's for the taking other than the Tory party, because their campaign was so awful and everyone knew it was awful. But Labour, despite winning back loads of seats, still sort of neck and neck with the Conservative Party.
No, but you got to understand the geography of Britain as well. You got to understand that the reason why Labour actually can't win an election, technically speaking, is not actually got to do with England. It's
Scotland.
Scotland. It was, and this was the most shocking thing.
This is the irony. Scotland put the Tories in.
Exactly. That's never happened before. And the elephant in the room is Brexit. All the patriotic Scots came out and said, "Fuck it, we'll vote for fucking the Tories." They got 13 seats. In Scotland, that's mind-bendingly weird, considering they only had one the year before, or whatever the fuck it was.
But it's even more weird because Scotland largely voted to remain, and now they're responsible for putting in a party that is pro-Brexit.
Yeah, I think one thing that we always need to remember as far as Scotland goes is that the Scottish independence referendum was only a few years back. And Ruth Davidson did make an awful lot of capital out of saying we are the Conservative and Unionist Party, that Nicola Sturgeon, she wants to refight the referendum again, etc., etc. So I do think that they made a lot of progress actually on unionist lines as well, to say we are opposed to the SNP's programme of taking you out of the UK. And that might have been where they... Because if you look at the seats that they picked up, the Tory seats, that is, the vast majority of them were right on the border between Scotland and England, which suggests perhaps more of a unionist slant on it, maybe.
Well, it was definitely the unionist vote. And that's the weird thing is, but then if we get to a point where maybe Brexit's in sight, but the system domestically is shite, which it is, then people will bite their lip and go, well, fuck it. Like, if I had a choice between the Labour Party and a soft Brexit, I'd vote for Labour any day of the week. Even though in my heart, I don't want to be a part of that bureaucratic shit. I would still.
All right. Let's not go down that rabbit hole again.
No, but it's true. It's true.
No, I know.
But if you think that's the way of some voters, then it's possibly the way it is. Like, I would vote for UKIP. I know this is going to sound shocking if I got my way when it came to Brexit. I like Nigel Farage, not because of his policies, just the fact that he points out shit that makes sense and it's factually true.
But you also like him because he's not that fucking Henry Bolton arse clown that no one's heard of, who's like fucking a 25-year-old racist.
Well, I don't like him, period, anyway. I mean, to be fair, UKIP's always been a one-man band. Let's face it. It's always been Nigel Farage. He's a likeable twat, shall we say.
Depends who you are.
Whatever. He just is. But at the same
He's like the Antichrist in this area.
Yeah,
oh, God.
I mean, he is. He's a likable twat. But at the same time, he just makes some good points. And like I said, the remain and leave thing for me, I'm just being patriotic. I don't want to fight for them. I want to fight for my queen / you guys. So, whatever. That's just my opinion. I'm a nationalist. I don't give a fuck when anyone
I just welled up a little bit there.
Well, you can't call me racist, for fuck's sake. You
know, I don't think anybody has in this stream at the very least.
No, I'm saying for our viewers. I'm just saying for the views. You can't say like I'm anti-immigrant because none of that shit works on me.
No,
I know why.
I do think that stuff is pushed way too much since the vote. Actually, though.
Of course it is. It's
like
silly.
they're overdoing it so bad since the referendum vote. The whole sort of anti-immigration.
Well, that's what I said before. I don't think if you want to remain that you're anti-British because that's fucking stupid. I know why people want to remain, obviously, because they think something that we grew up with is being taken away, and it is. To be fair, don't lie about it. It is, but at the same time, what are we trying to achieve as a country is completely different than do we want to be a part of this system? And to be fair, if you ask most British people, they don't. That's why we didn't join the fucking euro.
Hello, Philip. Well, Philip Mason's in the chat, by the way. He's my best friend of me, just so you know. And
we have a race lever as well who says a British accent live stream or some Euro accents. British accents, I think you'll find.
Yeah, British.
So I'm guessing but perhaps an American viewer or someone from Canada. I'm not sure.
Yeah, English.
Where is it?
Not British, they're actually English.
London.
Well, England's part of Britain, so.
No, we're not. I'm Scouse. I'm not even a part of England. What are you talking about?
Oh God! Wait until if you Scousers had a Brexit from the rest of England,
we'd vote yes. Just so
they vote yes,
so
but then they still want the money
from
London. So please, come on.
No, so would Yorkshire, and the West Midlands. We'd all vote to leave London. It's a stain on our country, London.
Shut up! London would vote to leave you, and they're the ones actually paying for it. So shut up.
Yeah,
bastards.
That is one thing that I find funny.
Terrible place. Terrible.
London is a bubble, to be honest.
Yeah, if you want to meet real people, come up north. That's where we all live. We don't live down south. Down south is for all the people who just fucking got stuck there at birth.
Yeah, and we got Wi-Fi a few years ago as well, so we've done the place up. It's not so shit anymore now.
What, is it dial-up?
See, I say this as a person born in the south who now lives in the Midlands or the north.
That's what I mean. Your accent
migrants, economic migrants, taking all our jobs, you bastard.
Like earlier, when you called into Nigel, to Uncle Nige, when you were like, yeah, it's Matt from Stoke. You could not sound less Stoke. I was like, I'm sorry, you're really not selling that very well. Like it's ex-Southerner Matt.
I find that racist that I am being judged on my background rather than.
God, shut up, you PC lefties.
Oh, James. Stop.
But no,
it's salt of the earth. That's what we like to hear. And we beat Man City.
Well, I'm really offended because a friend of one of my friends who I met for the first time the other day is like, "Oh, are you from Essex?" And I was like, "Excuse me."
What?
I was so offended by that. He actually thought I was from Essex.
I'm from Essex.
Yeah, I know, but come on. I mean, my accent doesn't sound like an Essex girl.
It sounds well. It's to us Southerners who can distinguish the accents. Yes, I can tell the difference. But like, as soon as you move to other bits of the country, I can kind of see why other people think that all the Southern accents blend into one because they are.
Well, no, not really, because I'm sort of close. Well, West Country. You wouldn't think it, but
I do.
A little bit. Now,
the further southwest you go, you really do like the accents change.
Oh, can I be fair, Rowan? You do sound like you're a carrot cruncher, slightly.
Oh,
A carrot
what?
cruncher.
You know what a carrot
What
cruncher
does that mean?
Farmer.
Ah,
Farmers, farmers. They talk like that a little bit.
okay.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that carrot cruncher was the term for that.
Yeah, they got a little bit
Angel-
of twang.
Yeah.
Angel sounds London-esque, apparently.
Well, I'd say that's about
James.
right, seeing as
Oh
you
my
are
God.
London-esque.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, yeah,
James,
that's
London's a city.
Yeah, but on the point of London and the rest of the country, it's quite funny because I think if London were asked, would you like to set up your own city-state and leave the rest of the UK?
They'd probably say yes.
They'd say yes. However,
Oh,
I think if you were to poll the rest of England apart from London and say, would you like to kick
Do you want to
London
get a
out?
shot of London?
Yeah,
They'd
they'd
say
probably say yes as well. Yeah.
it would be like 90% turnout and sort of like an 85-15 split, probably.
Yeah, so look, I'll tell you what, right? If London and Scotland, and you can take Northern Ireland as well if you really want, if you
I
guys all
can have
want to
Gerard.
stay in the...
I can have Gerard as like my little bitch. Yeah.
You can have custody, like we're divorcing and splitting up the kids. You can have custody of Gerard. If London, Scotland, and Northern Ireland all want to stay in the EU, then that's fine. And then the rest of England and Wales, we can leave, and then that will make broadly everyone a little bit happier. Apart from the fact that we've just split the UK down the half.
Well, technically, it wouldn't be. You know what, right? I always had this idea of it would be actually in England's best interest if, think about this economically, if Scotland left and was a European member, and if Wales left and was a European member, and Northern Ireland became a part of Ireland, I'm not saying that would or should, but if them three parts of England became, or Britain, sorry, became members of the EU, England would stand to make more. The reason why that is because there's more people who live in fucking England than anywhere else. We would actually stand to make more money because you trade with us. That's actually factually true. If England was its own country and the rest of the country's pissed off and did what they want, England would make more money. That's a fact.
But then we wouldn't have the Union flag anymore.
Well, who fucking cares about flags, man? That's the fucking.
I
Actually.
Yeah, I thought you were just saying about how dedicated you are to fight for your queen and your country and all this other stuff. And now you're like, fuck the flag.
Hold on a minute. I'm just talking economics. I'm not talking like patriots.
Yeah, but come off. All the Union Jacks nowadays are knockoffs made in China anyway, so who gives a shit? Anyway, and I hate to end this so quickly, but I have to wrap this up because I suddenly realised it's nearly 3:45 and I have to
have a life.
I've got to meet someone for work.
Make a roast.
And no, I don't have to make a roast. I did yesterday, and I did burn it slightly, but it tasted good, so it's all fine. But I just want to say thanks to all of you. I did, of course, I did. I do it every week. You know.
That's the only part you ever burns the fucking veg.
Just before you go, Angels, can I read this last comment you've got in the chat here?
Yeah, sure, of course.
We are making trades here. Will you take Trump for Nigel Farage?
No,
I'm afraid not.
Oh no,
sorry.
No,
you're stuck with Trump, and we'll keep Farage for the time being.
Farage is our little tip. Get your own.
Well, apparently, Trump actually would like Farage to be the international
ambassador or something.
Yeah, the ambassador. So we'll see how that pans out for him. He's failed to be an MP 9 times, so we'll see if he has better luck elsewhere.
Well, he needs something to do once he's out the European Parliament, won't he?
And like I said though, he always goes, "Oh no, I'm."
To look forward to.
Of course he does. Of course he does. Fucking hypocrite. But then also he goes, "Oh, I'm out of politics now," and then he makes a return every 5 minutes. So never trust a word.
I think some of it is because he really wants to be relevant. And
definitely, it's for yeah, definitely, like puffing his chest out.
Breaking news: the next leader of UKIP is going to be him. When that guy.
Oh, I do think that too.
But I don't know. But he was saying that he doesn't want to. But I'm thinking, yeah, he's a little glory hunter like Man United fans. So.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, I just want to thank everybody, and I'm sorry for the side chat. We haven't been quite as on point as we normally are with it, and it's good to have Race over here. I know I haven't. I'm sorry. I've been sort of getting ready, running around, doing work stuff at the same time. The apparent multitasker that I am, even though I can't even manage to not burn vegetables a lot of the time.
All the time. I've never known you to cook a dinner right now without burning shit.
Oh yeah, no, this is true. I do. I burn it the whole time, but sometimes burn actually, adds a bit of flavour. I like to tell myself. Anyway, thank you very much to everyone at Swiss, especially obviously Rowan Stizer. Thank you, and cheers for the side chat. Everybody subscribe, because every now and again we will have these impromptu chats on our other channels.
I like the impromptu chats. You should do more.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I've been really busy recently, and this afternoon I have to actually. I know this sounds like a proper first world problem, but I have to go to the Harvester, and I'm really disturbed by that fact.
Is that? What's Harvester?
Well, exactly.
It's like,
what is that?
It's like a pub.
Restaurant or a pub.
Pub restaurant, isn't it?
Okay, I thought it was something of a fucking field.
Imagine like middle class Weatherspoons. That's basically.
No, isn't it when you go for
middle class? It's proper like raggy.
Isn't it when you go for a carvery and you go to a harvester?
It's like Toby Carvery, really disgusting.
Oh, I might have been confusing that for another.
Yeah,
actually.
You can get really cheap carveries these days.
See, I'm
yeah,
thinking,
I know.
When someone says harvester, I'm thinking I can. What is it? I've got a brand new harvester now. I'll give you the key. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Anyway.
I'm old.
Cheers for having us, Angels.
Yeah, no, and thank you guys for turning up. And I will catch you all later. Who knows? There might be a cheeky stream on Stizer's channel. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
It probably is going to be now.
Now? Okay, well then I can join when I can join when I get back from middle class Weatherspoons.
I need to head off and go get a food shop.
Weatherspoons is not middle class.
No, but he was saying that Harvester is basically middle class.
No, I may have got that wrong, to be honest.
It's only sending into madness. I'm gonna have a hangout right after this, so if you want to fucking keep talking shit in the side channel or whatever it is,
go over to Stizer's channel. Yeah,
make sure it's the right
and I will definitely rejoin when I'm back. I'm only going to be out about an hour. So.
Yeah, I'm going to be out for a little while as well, but I may well give it a look in once I'm back in. So.
Me too.
All right, guys, and cheers to everyone. Like, subscribe, etc. And I will speak to you soon. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.